This is Appendix A, page 2. Example 3. In order to determine whether each equation is an identity and a conditional equation or a contradiction, we need to solve the equation. So let's do that. For part A, we need to solve for x, so I'm going to subtract the 4x from both sides, and then add the 9 to both sides, and then divide both sides by 2. So we have a solution of 11. Now since this just has one solution, one number solution, this is called a conditional equation. Part B, solving again for x, I'm going to distribute the 7 on the right side, and then I will subtract 14x from both sides. Do you see how the x went away? And so now we have an equation that is false, because 10 is not equal to negative 35. So that means that there is no solution, or we can just write empty set. So this equation is a contradiction. And then part C, let's solve for x by distributing the negative 3 and then combine like terms. And you can see that both sides have exactly the same expression. If you want, you could add x to both sides, but do you see how you'll still have the same thing on both sides? So this is a true equation, and so this is going to be an identity. So no matter what you plug in for x, that equation will be satisfied. The quadratic equation in one variable, so let's write that in here, is an equation that can be written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So the a, b, and c are all real numbers, and a cannot be 0. If it was 0, then we'd have a linear equation. And this equation is written in standard form when you have everything on one side, written in descending order on the left side, equal to 0. So for example 4, we're going to use the zero factor property. Let's write out what that property is first. So the zero factor property this says if you have two numbers multiplied together, I'll just call them a and b, and that gives you 0, then, so if this is true, then a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. So I'm going to use that property to solve this quadratic equation. The first step is to get everything equal to 0. We want to write it in standard form. So to do that, I need to subtract the 2 from both sides. And then if I want to get this into factored form, I'm going to use the trial and error method. I can write down factors of 10, and then factors of negative 2, and then we just keep trying different factors until something works. So this is by trial and error. So my goal is to get a 1x when I multiply the inner and the outer and add those together. So I'm going to take numbers that are kind of close together. So we have 2x and 5x. That multiplies to give us the 10x squared. And then a 1 and a 2. And then I want a positive x, so I'm going to put plus 1 and minus 2. So to check for the middle term, we're just multiplying the inner together, so we get plus 5x, and the outer together, so we get negative 4x, and that adds up to 1x, which is our middle term. So now we've got this in factored form, I can use the zero factor property. We set each factor equal to 0. Since one of those factors has to be 0, and then we solve for x. So I'll subtract 1 from both sides, divide by 2. For the other equation, I'll add 2 to both sides and divide by 5. So this has two solutions, -1/2 and 2/5. Example 5, we're also solving a quadratic equation, but now we're going to use the square root property. So let's write out what that is. So the square root property this says that if we have x squared is equal to k, then x is equal to plus or minus the square root of k. So if we have something squared equal to a number, then x is equal to plus or minus the square root of that. So let's try using this property to solve these equations. First one, we have x squared is equal to 29. So using that property, that means that x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 29. So those are the two solutions, plus or minus root 29. And then part B, we have it all ready to use the square root property. So we say x minus 8 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 24. And then to get x by itself, we add 8 to both sides. It's easier to read if we put the 8 in front. And then we take out all the perfect square factors of 24. So 24 is 4 times 6. 4 is a perfect square, so that comes out as a 2. So here we have two solutions, 8 plus 2 root 6 and 8 minus 2 root 6.